we have to be looking at tools, methods, psychedelics, circles, somatic body practices that recreate a sense of safety, of cohesion, and of intimate proximity. We're not talking about sex here, of connection, of trust in human beings. This is how we'll protect the erosion of our democracies. This is how we'll stop distrusting in institutions, because don't forget that all these institutions and governments, they're human-led. And now with the venue of AI at such a bulldozing speed, we're going to have even less space to create connection. So I think that our true capacity lies in fostering, protecting, and expanding our capacity to connect.
Welcome to Into the Multiverse, a podcast brought to you by SuperMush, where we believe that mushrooms can actually change the world, and that if humans mirrored the magic and wisdom of the fungi kingdom, we would have a far more joyous and connected planet. Each week, we'll be meeting with thought leaders and experts to extract the best insights and stories across everything from functional fungi, psychedelic medicine, and so much more. Thanks for listening. Step into the multiverse with us. Welcome back to another episode of Into the Multiverse. We are sitting here live in Antarctica, and I'm so excited about this conversation. I have had the pleasure of being Sophie Grégoire Trudeau's roommate for the last week of this trip, and I'm going to give a quick bio on you. You can fill in any gaps, but Sophie is a wellness advocate, former First Lady of Canada. She's an author, a yoga teacher, the ultimate multi-potentialite, and you're really just an amazing woman. And my experience of you over this last week has been really special, because I am a big believer in the fact that we need strong, empowered female leaders that are leading in their feminine. I've just read the first few pages of your book that you gave me a few hours ago, and already it's making me emotional. So I am so excited to have this conversation with you on this very rocky boat trip. So if you see us in the video going back and forth, it's because we're
feeling a little bit nauseous.
Feeling a little bit nauseous. It's because we're on this crazy boat trip. But I'm so excited to have this conversation with you.
Me too. Listen, if I started in television in my 20s, I'm like 50, turning 51 this year. And if somebody would have told me 30 years later, here I am in the middle of the Antarctic with you, this beautiful, pure soul, just, the circle of sisterhood I find is expanding in ways that the world needs it so much. And at every new encounter, for me, this is sacred space. So thank you for having me here. Like, I can't wait to dive in with you and with everybody.
So where I would love to start is, as I'm reading the first few pages of this book, and I know that can't even give me a full essence of what it's about, but I feel, from both being your roommate in very intimate and real circumstances on this boat, and just watching how you interact with other people, is the unique thing about you is you're super present, and you feel the same with every person that I've watched you interact with, and that level of presence is difficult to cultivate. It also, for me, it seems like it comes from a lifetime of really working on yourself and being in touch with your feelings. So I'd love to start with, what is the main message of this book? It's titled, Closer Together, Knowing Ourselves, Loving Each Other. What is the reason you wrote this book, and kind of the main message that you want people to understand when they read it?
That we all need to be seen, loved, validated for who we are. And in the world that we live in, what does it mean to lead an authentic self and an authentic life when we're actually being rewarded for self-betrayal? We live in a culture that rewards us for self-betrayal. Performing looks a certain way, aging looks a certain way. Everything is anti, right? Anti-aging, anti who you truly are, because you got to be in competition with other people to leave a mark. Or all of this is kind of like a delusion, an illusion. When you say that, bunking with me and, waking up together, just sharing such an intimate space on a boat, and also, reading about what I do in my life and the people that I've encountered, as much as I've been in different settings, I don't know, at Buckingham Palace, meeting the Queen, or meeting, a farmer in Ethiopia. The greatest lesson that I've ever integrated, and I think this comes from my parents and how they raised me in nature, is that there is truly no difference between human beings. Like, we're all born equal, but from a neurobiological perspective, and this is why I wrote the book, from what happens in your brain and how you're first attached and how you first trust human beings and your own body, it sets a tone in your brain on how you're going to connect with other human beings and yourself, amongst, of all, on your life path. And so this is why I decided to write Closer Together. And the book is, like, the title is not a fluke. It took me a really long time to find the title. Closer Together, knowing ourselves, loving each other. It's really all that we want. We're creatures meant for connection. And our brain is what, like 200,000 years old? And its only kind of role is to get us away from danger and that saber-toothed tiger that's in the cave. Nowadays, it's stress, constant bombarding information coming our way, social isolation, and seek comfort, seek connection. And, people are like, yeah, well, I don't need that many friends. I don't need to be in total contact with humans all the time. Completely understandable, because people are a little bit overwhelmed by how they live. And we were talking about this earlier this morning, is that we're pathologizing so many conditions, from a mental health perspective, but they're not truly pathologies, because our bodies are doing exactly what they're supposed to do in abnormal living circumstances. So this is why I wrote the book. This is why every beginning of the chapter is my story, because I suffered from eating disorders when I was younger. And the other part of the chapter is me sitting down with a world expert, because I had the privilege of having access to these people through my work and through the platform as being an unofficial First Lady of Canada. I met incredible human beings along the way. And I told myself, I can't keep this to myself. This has to be shared with as many people as possible. Self-knowledge is a human right. It's not a luxury. And we got to democratize this as much as possible.
It's really beautiful and inspiring. And I think that, one other observation that I've had is, you're very real and you're very authentic. And we've had many, late night conversations and early morning conversations about authenticity. And I've been really inspired with your perspectives around authenticity. And I think being a woman is interesting in today's day and age. Most of the people I know growing up suffered from an eating disorder and suffer from some sort of lack of worthiness, specifically based on aesthetic. And you're so physically beautiful, but internally really matches that. And something I experienced, I worked in a lot of different industries, modeling industry being one of them, but oftentimes the striving for physical beauty is the thing that creates like the most lack of safety in a woman's nervous system, because there's this constant constant battle. So I'd love you to kind of speak into that. And also, specifically being a woman who is like, in society, we're going to get old, we're going to die. What is your perspective on aging, and what would be the message you have for like maybe the younger version of yourself that, didn't have the tools that you have now?
Wow, that's such a big question, because, safety is not just like, when you use the word safety, and for a woman, but for any human being, is not just the absence of a threat, right? Imminent or in your life, but it's the presence of connection. And when we talk about authenticity, by the way, like evolutionary biologists, and I'm sure that most of them are men, have research showing that as long as a society will put the female body as a source of adoration, adulation, selling parts of it as well, and as the object of desire to be attained by men and controlled by men, we will have dysfunctional societies. So today, I think the aura and the symbol of women has changed through time. But today, when you look at what does it mean to be an authentic person as a woman, so authenticity, this is Dr. Gabor Mate's wife, Freudian slip, work of life work, is authenticity is expressing who you truly are in your creative nature without changing anything in your behavior to please. Oopsie, we all do it. And not only do we all do it, we're rewarded for it. So when you're a child, and you're a baby girl, well, obviously, or a baby boy, you're going to want to adapt your behavior so that your parents give you attention and love and constant care. This is what we do as children. It's super important. The role of the parent is usually and profoundly to give constant quality, constant care, love, and presence. But for most of us, that's not the case. For too many, it's not the case. So I think that growing up in a society where we tell women, go out there, be yourself, and be your authentic self. It's so hypocritical, because we're telling women to be themselves, but we're asking them to change their eyelashes, their teeth, their mouth, their genitals, their breasts, their hips, their everything. And we are normalizing this. We're normalizing it. And we are swallowing the pill that we're telling ourselves, well, I'm just doing it for myself. Really? Do you know of any 6-year-old little girl who would be told by somebody, later on, my love, I just want to tell you that we'll be sliding your chest open and inserting objects, or we'll be, injecting fillers into your face so that you can feel happier and more at ease with yourself? We're not judging here, but can we take a couple of steps back and look at what we're doing to ourselves, and look at the multi-billion-dollar industry that's controlling all this message? And I understand, surgery and all the means that we have in this society to heal, dysmorphia, or somebody who's had an accident. Like, it's incredible, it's miraculous. But when it comes to exclusively beauty purposes, I think it's a dangerous road to embark, because first of all, people don't know when to stop. People don't really know when to start, and now it's starting younger and younger. And I think that in a way, when we dilute and numb ourselves with all these distractions, we're kind of not sitting in our wisdom, in our intuition, in our spiritual experience of what it means to be immortal. Every time we do something to counter our nature, like I get it, there's coquetry. I like to put a little bit of makeup on, put a little bit of color in my hair. My gray hair is coming out. I'm not fighting it just yet. Sometimes I'm like, okay, cover it a little. But these are all little examples on the continuum. But I'm asking myself, where does this stop? And what's next? It's a real question to ask ourselves, because if we look at the definition of authenticity, and we are changing our behaviors to please. We do it as children, but we do it as adults as well to fit in. And conformity is something that the brain is always seeking. The human brain seeks conformity. We have this visceral need to belong and to feel that we are accepted by the tribe. And now what's even more dangerous is we discussed this earlier, is the idea of collective illusion, right? That the loudest voices repeated for the most amount of time become the opinion of the majority. This is not representative of truth. And we're like toying with the truth these days. We're distorting it. And one political party thinks, this is what the truth looks like. And the other one is using more science data and, research to promote ideas or policies. I think we really have to figure out how, as women, we will lead this movement, I would say, of truth and of acceptance and of non-resistance, in the way that when we resist our true nature, doing whatever we need to do to ourselves or changing our behavior, we're not being the creative selves that we're meant to be born as creative people who express differently and who enrich the whole, right? It's a big question.
It's a big question. It's a big question. There's so many directions to go from it. Kind of a frame that I want to share with you, because I think you'll like it. It's something I've been thinking about a lot recently. Is like if you were to picture the body as this kind of concave, empty vessel, and like everything that we're feeding ourselves, whether it's food or social media or thoughts or emotions or whatever it is, if you picture each of those things having this unique note, and then those things over time, they become, symphonies and melodies and harmonies. It becomes a song of your life and what you're playing out to the world. And what is really, I guess, what struck me about what you're saying is we're at risk in our society of becoming the same note. Yeah, because we're
conform, like everybody looks the same in a way.
Yeah, and the same song, and so the sadness in that is there's like this homogenous tone that we may be playing, and there's a lot of considerations and rabbit holes with that, with AI and us outsourcing our idea generation, our creativity. But I think something that's really important is we all know or may resonate with the fact that you can feel it when you're in the presence of someone who's in their authenticity, because your nervous system feels safe. And that's something, I've been reflecting to my partner. I'm like, oh, thank God I'm staying with Sophie, because these experiences, of coming on a big retreat can be overwhelming. And the nervous system, especially when you go into big groups of people and you're trying to share your message of into the world and connect, we can often want to impress other people, and we shift our authenticity, and we're creating these almost false connections because we might feel that someone's better than us, or they might be acting like they're better than us, and we want to please. And I think one of the greatest gifts that you can give people is to have those around you feel safe in your presence and have their nervous system feel calm. Because then what that creates is this cycle of they feel safe to be themselves and their authentic self. And I've 100% felt that this week when I'm with you. And it's a really amazing thing because you've done all this incredible, this wild resume in your life.
But who's left when you put all the resumes and titles aside, right? That's the true question.
That's the true question. Yeah. And I've gotten to interact with, the playful version of you and the funny, and just really you're so simultaneously mature and childlike, and the maintenance of that.
Best compliment ever.
Yeah. It's really beautiful because I feel like if we can preserve our inner children, and it's a part of that safety and that authenticity. And so I guess the question through all of that stream of consciousness is, when it comes to the people you feel the safest around, what are the qualities of those people? What is the work that you think is important for us to be doing to make other people feel safe to be themselves in our presence?
The simple answer will be one sentence: to be aware that you're aware, to witness who you are, to have a distance between your actions and looking at your actions. To me, that's the ultimate experience of life, is to be able to be aware that you're aware. So what does this mean? So in the book, there's a quote that I wrote. It says, your emotional biography sets the musical scale of your life, okay? But your unwounded soul writes the ultimate symphony. So we think we're broken. We're not. We're just trying to come back home to ourselves. And that hurts, because it means we have to look at our wounds. We have to look at our pain. And, when we talk about addictions, let me ask you this question. Can you think in your life of a habit that you have that gives you temporary reward or relief, right? In the short term or right away, but in the long term isn't so great for you. So just think
so many things.
Right?
So many, yeah, so many.
So when I talk to groups of people, everybody, or at least 3/4 of the room, raise their hand, because we all have something that we think about, a habit that looks like this or sounds like that. That's a definition of an addiction. So as Dr. Gabor Mate says, don't look at the addiction, look at the pain under the addiction. And this is I'm not wanting to romanticize it or make this look, it's so spiritual. No. Your pain is your gift, because it's your opening into who you truly are if you're willing to dig. And soul excavation hurts. It does. But the difference between somebody who is ready to evolve and somebody who's stuck in a place where they can't move from anymore is playfulness, humor, openness, and curiosity. Here is the really fascinating thing. When you look at society right now, apparently in the modern world, let's say, apparently more than 50% of the people are dysregulated, meaning they're in their fight, flight, freeze, fawn, which means people pleasing, system, which is your sympathetic nervous system, which is okay to be in, but not for too long. And people are stuck there. And when you're stuck there and you don't go into your parasympathetic mode, which is your rest and digest, and usually during a day you go from one to the other, what happens is that when your nervous system is stuck in that fight, flight, freeze, fawn mode, you have very much difficulty experiencing compassion and empathy. So look at the state of the world. If more than half of the states of the world, of the, Northern Hemisphere's population is stuck in there, how come is it that we feel threatened by the difference of others? And by the way, in my book, I interviewed a psychologist who's been in practice for 45 years. She's a super wise woman. And she said, Sophie, the most unhappy human beings I've ever met in my life are the ones who cannot trust in others. And now we're witnessing in our democracies and in our modern world and throughout the world, an erosion of trust. So to be able to create a safe space right now, and in our bunk room, right? Or in a classroom, or in a company, or in a relationship with your loved one, a space of safety is I would say the most sacred act that you could ever do. Because what does it mean? It means that you have two regulated nervous systems in one same room, in one same space. Because relationships is you, me, and the space in between. This is fully charged with energy. right? The fact that we're looking at each other right now is co-regulation. And here's the cool thing. I remember interviewing a relationship like expert in my book, John Gray from Stanford originally. And he said, you can't really regulate two brains exactly at the same time. So if we had a problem, you and I right now, and you can like transfer this into your lives, whoever's listening right now with, you know, a coworker, a lover, a child, whatever it is. And we want to repair something that, you know, a conflict or something that went wrong, or, you know, something that we're facing, an obstacle that we're facing together. I would have to listen to you for 10 to 20 minutes for your nervous system, eye to eye, without going, without making any facial expressions, because you pick up on them in 100 milliseconds, of just neutral, deep listening without suggesting, commenting, or criticizing. Difficult, I know. For 10 to 20 minutes for your nervous system to be like, okay, I'm telling the story of how I feel right now. Receive it. Don't tell me anything. Like I try to resolve the conflicts with my teenagers all the time. No, listen. And then you do the same. There's a listener and there's an observer. And then you do the same with me. And it's almost guaranteed that we walk out of this room with something that's resolved and with a sacred space of safety and peace. So how do we do this on a societal level to create containers of safety? And it's one of the reasons why we're here, because modalities like, you know, therapeutic assisted therapy with psychedelics is one opening and one avenue that could allow us to create more containers of safety to soften edges of not discomfort, but of, I would say almost ignorance of each other, you know, or threat coming from each other, because all of that is an illusion, unless you will exclude the very extreme cases where people want to hurt other people. But even then, hate stems from a deep need for connection that never took place. So you can understand even the most criminal activity, where is this all stemming from? It can be explained from a neurobiological, psychological perspective, right?
Yeah, it's such an important reminder. I'm like reflecting on all the places in my life where I'm not currently doing this, and also when applied, when I'm actually deep listening, how much more of effective strategy that is to, you know, to bringing people closer together. So I'm understanding the title deeper as we're having a conversation. And, you know, I think that women are, I think society's shifting, and I think that, you know, I feel lucky to be born in the time that I'm in, because I have reverence for the women around me that are able to lead with more feminine qualities. And a lot of the, you know, it's you can use whatever terms you want, whether it's not, doesn't actually mean female, but you know, feminine or masculine qualities. But I think a lot of the dysregulation that women experience and the lack of practicing these skills is that we're taught to be like men, and we're taught to lead like men. And the compassionate, softer, deep listening, empathy are traits that have historically been seen as weak in society and often aren't rewarded financially, or, you know, with rising the ranks of political agendas and things like that, which I know you have been, you know, been able to be a witness of in so many different ways. And so I guess specifically a message for women when it comes to being a powerful woman and being one that's confident and being able to, you know, speak articulately and be on stages and share these messages, yet often, but also be able to soften into yourself. How do you kind of find that balance? Because where I find this like crazy momentum point is when I see people that have mastered both of those qualities, and they're able to turn on their, you know, more operational logistics, go-getter mode, if you will, but then also be able to soften and be able to be with someone's heart and feel that compassion. And so I'm curious how you find that kind of like polarity within yourself, and how you would advise women that are wanting to achieve a lot, yet also kind of maintain that sense of softness, you know?
That's such a beautiful question. It's also almost like tantric philosophy, right? It's the dance between the light and the darkness, between the masculine and the feminine, between the softness and the fire, right? And to me, those are not paradoxical. They are meant to coexist. We tend to want to well, you can't have one or the other. I completely disagree with that. And I don't know if you know this, but child psychologists have taught us that boys are emotionally a little bit more fragile than girls in the first years of life. And first, when you read this, you're like, really? And I have 2 boys and 1 girl. And there's something there. And it's not like diminutive at all. It's just what it is. And when we teach these boys, as men or women, well, come on, toughen up and man up and repress some emotions, we create men who can't evolve, young men who really can't evolve because they're stuck in a mode of protection and not really sitting with their true nature. I think as women nowadays, we have a sacred space where we know that we can be the tender, the holding, the nurturing, the present, and the fiery, competitive, but in the best sense of the term, towards action, because they go together. They really do. They go together. The other thing is sadness. I want to talk about sadness. So as women, I think more than not, we cry more than men, right? We let the tears out more naturally because we weren't told as much. Well, we were told, well, don't be a crybaby, or you're such a sissy, or whatever, all those words that you hear. Or we tell boys, don't be like a girl, don't cry like a little girl, right? Well, here's the thing. When you analyze the 3 types of tears in the eye, the first one is basal. Right now, like our eye is lubricated just because you want to clean your eyes. Or if the wind came in, you would start tearing up to protect from a foreign object or whatever it is. And finally, the emotional tear. If a chemist analyzes the 3 of them, only one of them contains stress hormones. So when we cry, we detoxify. We make space for new. We clear the slate. So think about how, as women through time, and I haven't heard it in this way, but you're kind of making me realize this. Through time, we have cried a lot. And I mean, if you think of all the symbols from Mary Magdalene, right, to now when we cry, right? It's a sacred act to cry and to let sadness, although we've been abused, denied our most basic rights as women across this world, just only because we're women. There is a great injustice in all of this, but I think that we have had access to our well of waters inside of us, and we are now tooled and equipped to teach others. And doesn't mean, well, I have to do everything in the relationship because I have to teach my man or my boy how to, show up for themselves. Part of it, yes, unfortunately, but fortunately, because it's also a sacred act of sharing. And to all the women out there who are dancing between this sensitivity, this, opening up, and this more rigid, rational thinking, cognitive leadership, well, just remind yourself that we have a left brain for that and a right brain for emotional centering. So the fact that we're going from more left brain to right brain is actually a sign of neuroplasticity. And it's a sign of actual great intelligence. And add our intuition to that as women. How many times have you disappointed yourself because you didn't listen to your intuition? Ask this question to all the girls and women that you know. It's unbelievable. Every time we don't listen to it, usually we'll make a mistake, right? We have to teach our beloved boys and men to trust theirs as well. And sometimes because of the hormonal experience that they go through, it's true that their cycles are more led by testosterone and ours are more led by estrogen. So we do have different kind of cycles. And from a hormonal perspective, which is really important when you look at the psychology of men and women, they are very constant in 1 month, in 1 year. We have 4 brains in 1 month. So think about the neuroplasticity of these occasions that we have. People will say, in your luteal phase, like a week before your menstruations, calm down, slow down, while society's telling you, go, 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 don't stop, hide this, don't bleed, right? The messages are so paradoxical, but I think we're called through an expansion of our hearts and of our minds and of our bodies too. I would really invite women to sit with discomfort by pushing their physical and mental and psychological boundaries, because we have what it takes to do it, and to fall back on a ground that, hey, I know how to fall back from being in discomfort. We experience it every month, right? Physically. We need to do more of it, because that's when we grow. And men don't have that the same opening every month, to be able to play a little bit and experience. And although they've been taught the greatest hero's journey, right? Joseph Campbell wrote so much about this. Women have not had the same opportunity to develop their own hero's journey on this planet. But I think that now it's shifting. And we see how we need the masculine and the feminine to dance together. And let's stop saying that this only dances as women. It dances and it holds energy in men as well. And the more we'll be able to allow our men and boys to expand between those polarities, to understand that it's really one and that it's necessary, the better peaceful beings that we'll have, moving around in our society, in our families, and in our homes.
Yeah, there's so much good stuff there.
I know.
Wow, there's so much. There's so much. And I, as you were talking, first of all, I had no idea that about the tears.
Isn't it cool?
It's really cool
Yeah.
because it makes a lot of sense. And I love knowing these facts. So I'm storing that one in my back pocket. But
My friend Jeff Krasno taught me that.
Yes, I just met Jeff. So what was I guess alive in me as you're talking about the tears is the importance of feeling. And we've talked so much this week about places where both in pain and not, and vice versa, and just the importance of permission to feel and to go through those cycles. And a lot of why I'm so passionate about psychedelics is because of the permission slip I feel that it's given me in my own life to feel, and the physical changes that I've noticed to my body as a woman from what happens when I allow myself to feel those emotions. And a lot of the disease that we see on a physical level has an emotional element to it.
Oh my God. There's a new field now called neuropsychoimmunology, because scientists are now seeing there's a link between how we think, how we move, how it affects our health and our immunity. This is all linked. We can no longer dissociate it. And by the way, when we expand more from the heart has this kind of nervous system around it. And that nervous system has the capacity to predict negative events. It's fascinating. So when we drop from the brain in our head and we go a little bit more through the brain, right, intuition center in our heart, we're actually working from a more magnetic place, a more relational, connectional, it's not a real word, but space. And to be honest, it's what we need from cradle to grave is connection.
No, it's really interesting. And the one study that was recently done is a case series of women that had amenorrhea, meaning that they weren't going through the natural cycles of life. I didn't get a period for 10 years. And I talk about this, and psychedelics were a huge part of allowing me to get my cycle back and regulate my hormones and my gut function, and kind of return to the cycles of being a woman, because I actually didn't experience those. I didn't experience the shedding and the luteal phase and all the different phases you go through in 1 month naturally until I had this emotional reset. And the thing that I guess more that, the question I realize around this is the ability to feel comes from the ability to connect and relate and to feel safe. And, you mentioned at the beginning, but the way that society is gearing us to look, is to put plastic in our bodies and limit the ability we have to actually feel those emotions. And so one of the issues, I guess, that I'm kind of extrapolating is, when we do that, our ability to actually feel those emotions and shed those tears, because when you're changing the shape of your face, you're not able to feel that empathy and the connection. You're blocking the shedding of the stress hormones from your tears, as I'm just learning. And it's just creating this kind of, negative spiral. And one of the things that has been so powerful about being on this boat and learning all about psychedelic medicine and its power for healing is hearing these personal stories. And most of the stories come down to someone being able to go into a trauma, unpack it, and make a new meaning of that story. And so I'm curious, just with all of that you've experienced in your life, like what excites you about the space, whether it be, psychedelic healing or just like the therapeutic processes that we've learned about this week? And what do you think we need to focus on more?
I think we need to focus on our universal common denominators. And in my book, I explore them. So when you're born, You, Alli, me, Sophie. And by the way, when you talked about amenorrhea, which is, not having your periods, you were in the modeling world. You were under your healthy weight. I experienced the same thing for a little while when I suffered from eating disorders. I was bulimic, but I did lose weight, and I was just on the cusp of anorexia. The body is like, well, you're keeping me completely in a space of unsafety, and we do it because we're trying to compensate for a pain that we're not able to deal with. And whether it's food, sex, shopping, social media, plastic surgery, dieting, relationships, whatever it is, we're just using our drug of choice to numb our pain. It just hurts too much to sit with it. And it's not like we're educated in school to know how to sit with our pain, right? So I think that the two greatest responsibilities that we can equip human beings with is, first of all, to sit with your pain and discomfort, and second of all, to connect and tell your story, to connect with yourself and to tell your story to others. Now, whether it's the assisted therapeutic use of psychedelics, whether it's circles of storytelling, whether it's using body somatics to get over PTSD, because now we know that the body keeps the score. Whatever it is, we're trying to build more connection to ourselves and to others. And I can't see, having seen the world from a co-political path, through all the people who are decision makers, and seeing all the dysregulated leaders out there, or well-regulated leaders, and seeing how citizens are being really manipulated through fear and division. Now, there's a technique out there that you might recall maybe in your own circles, or that you've been a witness of. It's used by people who want to divide human beings, and it's depression, blame, and paranoia. So I'm just going to give you an example. Depression. Look at you, man. You're in your 1.5. You used to have a home. Now you have nothing. I feel for you. Poor you. I'm with you. So a recognition of the depressive state. Like, you feel validated because nobody is looking at you. You're just stuck, your situation went from one to the other, and somebody's telling you, man, I see you. Wow. But then comes blame. It's her fault. She left you. Look at how you are now, right? This is just a little mundane example, but bring it to a broader level. So that's depression, blame, and paranoia. I'm telling you, man, these women, they're taking over. They're taking over our jobs. The feminist movement is crazy, right? These are all, or like these immigrants are taking taking your jobs. We develop very quick rhetorics based on fear, division, blame, paranoia, depression, blame, and paranoia. And it works. It works because it gives a sense of belonging to people. So you can think of very well-known slogans in this world that give people a sense of belonging, but through kind of a rhetoric of fear and division. We have to be really careful with that because it keeps our bodies into kind of like an alert state. It gives us validation, so we'll stay there because that kind of feels like our emotional home. Whether it's women who were stuck in abusive relationships and who we might judge, well, why don't you get out? He's abusing you. Excuse me? Usually women who are in these positions, it's all the emotional home they ever knew. So their nervous system, even though it's in fight, it's in fight, flight, or freeze, usually it's freeze, they'll stay there because they know nothing else. So we have to be looking at tools, methods, psychedelics, circles, somatic body practices that recreate a sense of safety, of cohesion, and of intimate proximity. We're not talking about sex here, of connection, of trust in human beings. This is how we'll protect the erosion of our democracies. This is how we'll stop distrusting in institutions, because don't forget that all these institutions and governments, they're human-led. And now with the venue of AI at such a bulldozing speed, we're going to have even less space to create connection. So I think that our true capacity lies in fostering, protecting, and expanding our capacity to connect. And with the work that you do, that's what you're doing as well, is to create containers where we expand our capacity to explore and connect what truly makes us human, right? And I want to keep the human way, because there's a lot of threat out there that wants to, take over our humanity, but that's our most sacred procession.
I haven't heard that breakdown before of that kind of like trifold. But can you repeat it again? It's the first one is was the second one?
The first one is depression.
Depression,
so you create it and validate a state of depression.
Okay.
Then you blame, and then you create a state of paranoia.
Right. Okay.
And it works.
Yeah. I mean, as you were saying that, I'm sure everyone that is listening to this at the moment is, or maybe I would invite you to look at where in your life that you have either done that and or been on the receiving side of that. And so, there's larger, big, if you pull back, like political agendas that do that, but we also do that to each other in our intimate relationships.
Yeah. And the definition of emotional maturity as a human being is having control over your impulse, right? And being able to discern and be aware of your actions and reactions, and not give in to your impulse and desires, your lust and your rage, which are the two elements that we raise our men with. The two emotions they're allowed to release is lust or rage. Pour them. And pour us, because obviously we suffer the consequences of that. Right. So there's a work of wisdom that I would say. And I value what you do, because I do think that wisdom and our capacity to expand and to accept each other as we are without feeling threatened is probably what the health of our societies is resting on as we build the future today.
Completely. And something that comes to mind is, again, being a woman is an interesting thing, because we don't necessarily have the same playing field, and the need to belong trumps the need to have integrity. And so where I see a lot of kind of faults on the integrity line is where the psychological safety isn't met. And I've witnessed that in myself, where, when I was younger, there's decisions that I made. One example, right, just to give a frame of this, is going to the party of someone who you might know is like not really appropriate with women, but you're able to turn a blind eye to it because you don't feel psychologically safe in your community and your intimate relationships. And then the problem with that is that it's a permission slip for trauma to be perpetuated. And where I see people find ease in saying no to the person who's out of integrity but might be rich or powerful or well connected, or be able to influence their life in a powerful way. This is like a classic story you see across so many of the Me Too movements, all of these things, right? When there's deep psychological safety and you feel really dialed with who your intimate relationships are, and you feel trust and your nervous system feels good, it's easier to say no. And so the intimate relationships that we have, the classic example of the 5 people you surround yourself with.
Yeah, one hand.
And that I see as the most important thing that I've done for my life is surround myself with people that I'm like, wow, I really respect your integrity, and I'm watching the decisions they make, and they're not operating out of fear or, to go back to what you shared at the beginning, people that view the human as the human and they're not pedestaling other people. But that psychological safety, is so difficult to cultivate, because we are not taught to build these, closer together relationships, to quote your book again. And so with your closest relationships, what is something, I guess, that you look for in your best friends? Like, what are those qualities for people? Most of the world is really lonely. There's crazy statistics around 1 in 4 people, feeling lonely or having, not a single friend. Like it's growing and growing as we're more on social media. So for people that want to cultivate that psychological safety in relationships, how have you done that? Because you strike me as a very long-winded question, but you strike me as someone who's able to make decisions with integrity without fear.
Oh, I have fear.
Yeah.
Oh no, I have fear. I come from a generation where my dad told me, go Soph, you can do whatever you want. I still hear his voice. I lost him like more than a year ago. And it's like, go Sophie, t'es capable. In English means go, you can do it. But at the same time, hearing disgusting misogynist jokes, around the dinner table. At tennis camp when I was 14, I remember one of the counselors who was an ex-army, I don't know what his position was, would gather all the boys and say, one part of the group would have to say, Cindy's in the bush, and everybody would have to answer rape. I was 14 years old, and I was like, there's something off about this, right? And it's like the level of awareness of all this inappropriate, misogynistic, violent, ignorant behavior is less and less acceptable, thank goodness. But you talked about, what do I search in my relationships and in my friendships? Obviously, it's psychological and physical safety. So listen to this. This is fascinating. Abraham Maslow, who's like one of the great fathers of modern psychology, when he drew his triangle of the most basic needs that had to be met first, like food on your table, roof over your head, and then the human being could evolve into, becoming who they truly are. Well, he studied with an indigenous community at some point. I think it was the Blackfoot community. And he looked into their way of living. And he could have presented another model to the modern world. And he would have instead of putting emotional, physical safety, they didn't have a word for that, because their word, and this makes me emotional, is community. Mm. Without a feeling of belonging, of having each other's backs, there is no safety. So look at the world today. Since, big industrialization, we fragmented the community, and so we fragmented the individual at the same time. And now people feel and sense that they're in a million pieces, and they're trying to put the pieces back together. This is not a fluke. It happened through time as we dismantled. I often say we are the daughters of the witches they couldn't burn. At one point, all the knowledge, the intuition, the presence that we had, the connection to nature. Like right now, I'm getting chills just because I feel a coherence when we're talking, and a sense of belonging and of safety. Imagine if every human being could feel this, of being held. That first bond of trust that you create with your caregiver, and you're just a baby. You're flexible, you're malleable. By the way, babies aren't born resilient. That's BS. Babies are sponges. They need constant love, attention, and care, and validation of that their experience of reality is true. When they don't get that, or when it's there and sometimes it's not there, you develop a different type of bond of attachment, right? We talk a lot about your types of attachment in love as adults. Well, are you secure, insecure, disorganized? Are you anxious, ambivalent? Or are you more avoidant? Are you an introvert? Are you an extrovert? These are all kind of, staples that we use in a way to understand how we're connected to ourselves from the person who took care of us. And unfortunately, sometimes that person maybe abused us or maybe neglected us. This is real. And we carry this tone in our brains and in our bodies and in our nervous system for our whole lives, until we're like, wait a second, I want to understand why I act and react the way I do. I want to understand why I make the friendship choices that I do, or the partner choices that I do, or the professional choices that I make. Why is it that I keep repeating patterns? Because your nervous system, it was wired a certain way, and you keep finding emotional homes that aren't super healthy for you, but maybe that's all you know. So we have to stop judging each other on our own path of suffering, because we're just one trauma away from each other. One. It takes one life event to change your brain, change the way you perceive yourself, and whatever, malchance or misfortune happens to one could happen to you as well. So I think that when I look for friendships, and now I'm 51, right? It's kind of, I don't have time for gossip anymore. I don't have time to talk about other people's lives. And when I do, it's because I wish them well, and I want to understand the human condition more. I'm completely not perfect, and sometimes I'll judge way too quickly, but I'm trying to soften my edges so that I don't judge myself so critically, which I did for so long. I had this little hook like in the back of my neck. I remember in therapy, I would see it this way. Like every time that I would be too harsh on myself, as a haha, not good enough kind of hook. And through time, I tried to visualize it as a hook with little kind of pink, shiny feathers, a little bit of a softer hook. I feel like we put that hook on a lot of people when we put it on ourselves, and we just have to soften. But soften demands safety. You cannot soften in the arms of a lover if you don't feel safe. You cannot soften in a society when you don't feel seen. You can't soften in a classroom when you feel that you don't belong, right? It's all the same thing. Our capacity to soften and to connect comes from a place of safety. So that's our true task.
You speak about it so eloquently, and I think one of my teachers said this. I'll share this story. He was asked in one of our sessions where he's teaching different healing modalities, right? And someone asked him, how do you tell when someone's telling the truth, and how do you discern between who to listen to? And he responded very simply, and this isn't a scientific answer. He was like, but your nervous system knows when you're in the presence of truth, when you're connected and you're in tune with yourself, which I believe you are. And I believe that women have a unique capacity to be connected to their intuition, because we birth babies and we are just biologically wired to have that natural sense of intuition. But when you're connected to that truth, which I know is a big part of what you talk about, your life kind of guides itself, because you're just following the truth. When you start to like stack these lies on top of themselves, which sometimes when I do that to myself, when I'm lying to myself about the connections or the whatever it is, you just feel off. And unfortunately in our society, we tend to medicate that offness with pharmaceutical substances. And why I'm so passionate about psychedelics is I've seen, 1,000 times over in my own life and hundreds of people around me, how psychedelics can return us to the truth, because it forces us to look at a circumstance in a different way and make this new meaning. And, you so beautifully talked about the child and how we make these bonds. So one of the things that, we're even going to learn about later today is that intergenerational trauma piece. Dr. Rachel Yehuda, I love her work. And it's fascinating to look at the emerging research that originally started with Holocaust survivors, because they realized, researchers realized that there was impact far beyond the event itself, even generations down the line. And so the actions that we take today, it gives me a sense of responsibility, knowing that if I don't figure my shit out, my kid and my grandchildren are going to deal with the same nervous system impacts of that. And so the research is kind of underway. And I think that in our lifetime, absolutely, we'll be able to, have more conclusive evidence of where exactly this lives in our genome, so to speak. And so I guess, a few last questions for you here. I could talk to you. I could literally talk to you all day. Good thing I get to. We have a few more days on this boat. But what is something in this beautiful book that has your wonderful face on it, and crazy accolades from all of the
I know I still pinch myself
of the world? We have Gabor Mate, Ariana Huffington, Hillary Clinton, Gretchen Rubin, Gabby Bernstein. I mean, it's very decorated with powerful people that have recommended it. What is something that people would be surprised to find?
I would say my deep love for humans. When I launched this book with my friend Dr. Gabor Mate in Vancouver, we had a couple of questions pre-written to have this kind of a structure for the interview. And we're like 500 people in front of us, and he doesn't go with the first question that we're supposed to open with. And I'm like, what are you doing, right? And he's like, Sophie, and he looks at me and he says, this is not a book. I'm like, okay, where is he going with this? He says, this is your love letter to the world, isn't it? And I teared up on that stage, and I'm tearing up again, because what I've discovered is that it is now a luxury for human beings to feel safe and to have a regulated nervous system. So when we say the nervous system knows the truth, it should, yes, but we've taken that away from people, from how we live. So we have to reinstate the context and the community. And it's a gift to be able to find a home in someone else's heart, which we have on this short journey on a book in the middle of Antarctica, right? Antarctica. But I feel like our true duty as human beings is to find a home in other people's heart, is to feel like your humanity is connected to my humanity. And in this book, although I dive into the science behind our personality, I feel that, self-knowledge is a human right. Self-knowledge is a human right. Your right to be aware of who you are and how to control your actions and reactions and how to pause in life and be able to take a breather before you make decisions shouldn't be a luxury. But it is nowadays because of the way we live. So instead of, solitude is a human right. Being able to sit with yourself in silence and not feeling overwhelmed. I think Blaise Pascal, one of the greatest thinkers, wrote that all of the world's problems would be resolved if a man could sit by himself in a room and not be overwhelmed, right? Well, I think that's the true lesson of what's in this book. I have a lot of people coming to me at book signings, and there's like Post-its everywhere, and because they go back to it, because they're like, there's actual tools of how to create more safety in your body. Because let's not take it for granted. Not everybody has the luxury of having a regulated nervous system. And if we taught this to young kids in schools, like starting at daycare with appropriate language, we would have different kind of leaders, teachers, lovers, friends, colleagues. It would really change so much. So I I think the core message here is I'm an only child. I was taught to go out into the world and say, hi, my name is Sophie. Do you want to play? Like I'm still like that. I'm 51 and I still want to play. And by the way, Dr. Gordon Neufeld, who's one of the world's greatest child psychologists, who wrote Hold On to Your Kids with Dr. Gabor Mate, which is a life-changing book for parents to read. He was called in Ukraine during the war, and teachers were like, didn't know what to do with the children, right? The young ones. They're like, how do we regulate them? How do we keep them safe? Obviously physically, but emotionally. And he said, you take the curriculum, you shove it out the window, you put it aside, and you let the children play without structure. Now, think of all mammals. When a mammal stops playing, usually it's because they're sick. It's kind of same thing for humans. Playfulness sends us a signal of safety to our brain. So thinking about music concerts, sport events, although there's competition because people root for different teams. So creating cohesion, creating this space of safety through playfulness, because when we play as humans, we send a cue of safety to the brain. When you see, there's something so endearing, right? When you look at baby animals with their mums playing, and sometimes when I teach meditation, we'll take an example when we'll invite another human to go deeper within yourself and to choose a baby animal, and then we'll visualize inside of ourselves how would it feel to be so ever nurtured, that the nurturing presence of a mother or whatever, like a nurturer, a parent, is there for all of your needs. And most of the time people will start getting emotional because they'll realize, in my 4-year-old self, what is it that I needed so badly that I didn't get? And this is not to pinpoint and say, oh my God, it's my parents' fault, whatever. It's to be more conscious of, where do I move from? And how do I move into this world? Is it because I have a lack of, or, I'm longing for? Because we all long to be loved and validated. So through playfulness and humor, which kind of is like a universal healer, right? Mm-hmm. When a stand-up comic will reunite people from all political stripes and everybody will be laughing at the same thing. This is not just ha ha ha, very funny. It actually creates a sense of safety. Mm-hmm. So we can't forget how playfulness and how, kind of being in such immersed in the present moment is allowed through play and humor and just being together, not thinking about labels or where you come from, where we're going. But you do need to have a regulated nervous system to do that. And playfulness and humor will allow you to create a more safe nervous system as well.
There's so many golden nuggets here. I'm taking a mental journal of everything you've just said. And, I guess something I was talking about last night with someone about creativity and the importance of play, which is a huge, huge part of my life. And I notice my mental health significantly impacted when I'm not paying attention to that. So I have a practice where when I go to sleep, I audit my day based on how much I'm laughing.
Yeah, you were telling me that you take notes of how your day unfolded. I don't think I would remember.
Yeah, I'm like, I woke up in the
morning. Perimenopause.
Yeah. And it's both good for my memory, but it also gives me kind of a pulse on how seriously am I taking myself?
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah. And when I'm taking myself too seriously, I tend to be less happy. And so there's a balance to that, because I both want depth, but I also want the humor. And I just, in my last kind of question for you here kind of started with a reflection of, you are very playful and very alive. And I was talking to a friend last night about, when we don't express our play, our creativity, it kind of turns stale in the body. And I think a lot of the mental illness I see that oftentimes psychedelics actually reveals in people is that we have this joy that's trapped inside of us.
Wow. And
it's kind of layered on with the seriousness. And also, society tells us to be one thing. To bring it back to your intro, you're so many things. You're a yoga teacher and an author and a speaker and a this and a this and it's an endless list, right? And I think that's really beautiful, because that expression is what keeps us healthy and vibrant and alive. And
it's also my insecurity. So when I hear you say this,
I love it.
You're validating me, because I feel, jack of all trades, queen of none, right? So I'm like, well, maybe I'm doing too many things, but it's how I express my creativity and my playfulness.
I love it. And I think a lot of the mental health issues in society is because, I'll say this because I'm an accountant, so it's no shame on this, but like people that end up, being an accountant, they're actually supposed to be a painter. Also, there's financial incentives one way or the other here, so I'm aware of that. But I think the untrapped artist is something I really respect. And so,
and you don't know this, but I paint.
Okay,
And I
fantastic.
paint,
Just add it to the
no,
list.
No,
Add
but
it
I
to the
paint
list.
for fun. And obviously, what do you think I think of myself when I paint? I love it. And I can't believe I made it. But then I'm definitely not good enough to be a painter, right? That little voice of criticism, of comparison, it's always there. I know it, but I got to pick it up and say, why is it coming up again? Where is this stemming from? And at 51, I have to start painting again.
I think that's a good declaration that you're going to paint something. It was so amazing to have this structured conversation with you. And anyone that's listening, please check out Sophie's book. I'm so excited to read this. This will be a great, very long plane ride treat for me.
You can order it off Amazon, delivered at your doorsteps. So easy to get.
Amazing. Is there anything else that you want people to be looking out for coming up from you next?
Sure. Yes. So I'm working on, I teach yoga and meditation. I'm going to start giving a little bit of free classes. So if you want to go to my website, SophieGrégoireTrudeau.com. On Instagram, same thing. A couple of surprises coming up. I do virtual workshops. The next one on December 9th will be with Dr. Gabor Mate, which is very exciting, and more incredible humans to come. So I hope that you join. I'm making them affordable, accessible, because I think that emotional and psychological tools to better know ourselves should be easy access and affordable to everybody.
It was such a treat to talk to you in Antarctica. What a unique thing. And I'm really excited to follow more of your work and to be connected. So thank you so much for coming on the show.
Love you.
Thanks for diving into the multiverse with us. If you're interested in being a future guest on the show, sponsorship, partnership, or you're just mushroom curious, we're always looking to expand our mycelium network. Be sure to follow us on Instagram at Into the Multiverse, where you can find clips from this podcast, psychedelic legalization news, events that we're doing, and so much more. We've also created our own in-house consumer lifestyle brand called SuperMush. We make mushroom mouth sprays. We make a whole line of mushroom streetwear. You can find it on Instagram at SuperMush or online at supermush.com. We'll see you next week. Much love.